So you had the trials were being done in the same area where the mob had all their power, where people were either afraid of the mob or supportive of the mob.
Presumed mob leader James Carroll is the first to face the court. With little physical evidence, the case against the accused rests squarely on the shoulders of the two eyewitnesses, William Donnelly and young Johnny O'Connor. On the stand, Johnny O'Connor once again paints a terrifying picture of the night of February 4th. He recalls hiding beneath the bed and watching as the Donnellys are killed. He again claims that the ringleader was Constable James Carroll.
The boy was called up and proceeded to tell what he had seen. And there were creatures right behind him that wanted to kill him.
This little kid, Johnny O'Connor, was, in my view, one of the few heroes of the Donnelly story.
In court, William Donnelly is next, recalling the slaying of his brother John and the figures he glimpsed when he peered outside. For the surviving members of the Donnelly family watching the court proceedings, there is a firm belief that justice will soon be done. After a week of testimony, the jury retires, but they have trouble reaching a verdict.
There's the truth about what happened, then there's the proof about what happened, and then there's the what's the jury going to do about it.
At a second trial, a new jury is more successful. To many, the verdict is a shock. Constable James Carroll is found not guilty. In the courtroom, cheers erupt from the anti-Donnelly faction. For much of the country, not to mention the surviving members of the Donnelly family, an entire community has gotten away with murder.
The jury basically chickened out.
But the jury didn't have the guts to convict. And can you honestly say if you were on that jury, you would have convicted? I don't know if I have that much guts myself.
All they had to do was drive by the Donnelly homestead and see the ashes, and that would be pretty scary.
With ringleader James Carroll acquitted, the Crown has no choice but to drop charges against the remaining 5 men.
The second verdict was really like the stake through the heart of justice.
No one was ever punished for the Donnelly murders. No one was ever found guilty. No one ever served major prison time or was hung for that. And because of that, there is no ending to the story. There's no closure.
But how could such a brutal massacre go unpunished? Some have suggested that Johnny O'Connor was simply too young to be relied upon with the lives of 6 men hanging in the balance. As for William, his own history of being at odds with the law undermined his credibility. When he named names, perhaps he was simply settling old scores. Detective Michael Boyd's reinvestigation has already proven that the accused men had clear motives. But now, using the tools of scientific content analysis, or SCAN, he has turned up the most damning proof to have surfaced in more than a century. According to Boyd, there is now little doubt that Johnny O'Connor and William Donnelly were both telling the truth about what happened and who they saw on that cold February night in 1880.
At no point in the statement do I see any evasiveness in any of their testimony. Nowhere do I see them trying to back away from making a firm psychological commitment to the words that they're using to describe the experience that they lived. That's, in essence, they're telling the truth. Their testimony is truthful, and therefore it ought to have been seen as being credible.
They have passed a lie detector test capable of reaching back in time. From a modern perspective, it seems clear that James Carroll and his accomplices should have gone to the gallows.
Based on a re-examination of the evidence and with the support of Michael Boyd's modern investigative techniques, it is my opinion as a lawyer that if the case were tried today, the jury would convict the men accused of the Donnelly murders, find them guilty.
For years, William Donnelly continues to search for new evidence to bring the murderers of his family to justice. He dies relatively young in the year 1897. History now seems to show that the Donnellys were blamed for far more crimes than they ever could have committed. But if they were scapegoats in life, they were even more so in death. They, not their murderers, became the legendary villains beyond the reach of justice. Perhaps myths of an uncontrollable family helped appease an entire community's guilty conscience.
Rather than face why were 5 people murdered in the middle of the night, it's this big effort to somehow make it seem like they deserve it.
Is it a classic case of blaming the victim? I suppose so. Otherwise, they would have to take responsibility that there were murderers in their midst.
I just feel sad. I feel sad for everybody concerned because I'm sure that as a descendant I feel sad that justice wasn't done. So there comes a time when you have to bury the blood and just move on. It's not my fault, or it's not the descendants of James Carroll's fault for what happened 120 years ago. It's time to move on, that's all. You don't rest well as long as you're seeking vengeance, or as long as you hold a grudge. And I hope the grudges are all gone, for everybody's sake, for the people of the community, for the vigilante descendants, and for the Donnelly descendants. Move on and sleep well.